Welcome to the AreYouAnnie podcast, where those who have walked through fire or are still walking through it come to find their way to the other side of narcissistic abuse. Here, we don't use the word victim because if you've been subjected to narcissistic abuse, whether you're still in it, you're breaking free, or you're healing from its impact, you are something much stronger. You are a warrior against narcissistic abuse. I'm your host, Kyle Hackley, attorney, mother, grandmother, and author of Undercurrent, a novel about a young woman trapped in a narcissistic marriage who finds the courage to reclaim her voice. Today, we're going to talk about one of the biggest challenges warriors face: how narcissists refuse to respect boundaries and why that's never going to change. You tell them not to call you after 9. They call you anyway. You tell them you need space, but they show up at your doorstep unannounced. You set a boundary, and instead of respecting it, they push it, they test you, or they completely ignore it. Why? Because narcissists don't believe in boundaries. They believe in control. Let's break down why narcissists do ignore boundaries and how they can manipulate you into bending your own rules. But first, let me tell you a story. Annie was separated from Santino, trying to rebuild her life. But as many survivors know, just because the narcissist leaves doesn't mean that he is going to let go. One evening after a long day, Annie pulled into her parking lot of her apartment complex. She grabbed her groceries from her Jeep. She juggles her bags as she walks toward the door, unaware that she was not alone. Then out of nowhere, she felt a presence behind her, then a hand reaching for one of her bags. It was Santino. She hadn't invited him. She didn't even know he was in town, and yet there he was, suddenly at her side, acting as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "Let me help you," he said. His grip was already tightening around one of the bags. "No, I've got it," Annie says. She's firm but polite. She's trying not to escalate. She's trying not to engage. But Santino wasn't listening. He fought her for the bag, pulling it from her arms like it belonged to him. And before Annie could even react, he stepped inside her apartment, crossing the threshold like he belonged there. Straight into her kitchen, he helps himself to a drink, acting as if their separation, her boundaries, her need for space didn't even exist. And that right there, that's classic narcissistic boundary breaking. And when showing up at her home wasn't enough, he took it further. One afternoon, Annie was at work, focused on treating a patient. Then, over the intercom, she hears her name being paged to the front lobby. So naturally, she makes her way toward the entrance, only to stop cold. Santino, he was standing right there, his arms crossed, looking impatient, completely ignoring the fact that they were no longer together. As soon as she walked up, he started with the accusations, the demands, loud enough for everyone to hear them. She could feel the stares of her colleagues. The embarrassment was creeping in. But that was Santino's point, because narcissists don't just violate boundaries to get what they want. They do it to make you feel uncomfortable. They do it to humiliate, to shake your confidence, and to wear you down. And the worst part, they use your discomfort as leverage. I won't show up here again if you just talk to me this time. A narcissist will punish your boundaries further and further until they get what they want. Because once they see how upset or uncomfortable you get, it becomes a game to them. Now, every boundary violation isn't as dramatic as showing up on your doorstep or showing up at the workplace. It may be smaller, but it's just intentional. Imagine this. You've been looking forward to watching your favorite TV show all week. You sit down, you're finally ready to enjoy it. And just as it starts, the narcissist walks and stands right in front of the screen and starts talking to you, completely ignoring the fact that you're in the middle of something and they know it's something that you've been looking forward to. Why? Because they know it's irritating. They know it's disrespectful. They just enjoy seeing you frustrated. Well, we've been talking about how narcissists don't respect boundaries, but what happens when you actually enforce them? Well, if you've ever tried, you know what happens. The moment you hold firm, the narcissist escalates. Why? Because boundaries do more than just inconvenience them. They threaten their power. Here's what can happen when a narcissist realizes you're serious about your boundaries. They test you. They might ignore it at first just to see if you'll actually follow through. They argue and manipulate. They try to convince you that you're being unfair, cold, or even cruel. They might guilt trip you. Why do you hate me? You keep shutting me out of your life. They provoke a reaction. If they can't guilt you, they'll try to make you angry, because if you're emotional, you're engaged. They may punish you, smear campaigns, sabotaging relationships with mutual friends, anything to make you feel guilty for standing your ground. This is why so many survivors struggle to maintain boundaries, because narcissists don't just break them, they weaponize them. Now, not all boundary violations are loud and obvious. Sometimes they happen in ways that are so subtle that you don't even recognize them at all. Here's what they may look like. They bring up trigger topics on purpose. You tell them something that hurts you. Maybe you've confided in them in the past about something that upsets you. And you know what they do? They'll bring it up just to watch your reaction. Dismissing your emotions. Every time you express discomfort, they may say, "Oh, come on, it's not really that bad." They will force their opinions on you. Even when you've made a clear decision, they try to talk you out of it or make you feel stupid about your choice. They may monitor your actions, always checking on you, questioning where you have been, or inserting themselves into something that absolutely doesn't involve them. And the worst part, they do it so subtly that when you call them out on it, you can sound unreasonable. This is why many warriors against narcissistic abuse struggle with boundaries, because the violations don't always look like breaking down a door. Sometimes they look like a slow erosion of your sense of control over your life. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this episode because you never know who might need to hear it. You never know who might be another Annie searching for answers, searching for validation or inspiration. Because when one Annie tells her story and another Annie hears it, the healing cycle begins. And if you are Annie, please remember, you are a warrior against narcissistic abuse. You are stronger than you think. And I want you to be tenacious and never give up on what's important to you. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time.